Today we are going to look at using events that cause shifts in the market and analyze what we believe will happen to the market price and market quantity, also known as equilibrium. Think of these as puzzles where you have to figure out what happens. Let's start by looking at this sheet, Activity 1, that asks us to analyze price levels for a good and get reacquainted with equilibrium price and quantity. So consider the diagram at the right in answering the questions below, and the diagram is the quantity of pork bellies. We're given the price per pound on the vertical axis, the quantity on the horizontal axis. We're asked first to locate at $12 per pound, per pound, how much will be demanded, how much will be supplied. So we are going to go up to 12 on the grid and start reading across to the right. The first curve that we're going to cross is the demand curve. The second one is the supply curve. Watch in blue. So the demand at $12 is 2,000 pounds of pork bellies. And so I would write that in there. And you'll notice I have already filled this out to save us some time. As I continue to read across at $12, I hit the supply curve, and that is at 6,000 pounds of pork bellies. So I've taken that same procedure, applied it to $10, and we found that 3,000 would be demanded, 5,000 would be supplied. And at $6 and $4, you find that the quantity demanded keeps going up because remember, as something gets cheaper, more consumers want it. As a product gets cheaper, the less that suppliers can afford to supply. So at $8, that's the magic price where the demand and the supply are the same. It's where the curves intersect. So 4,000 pounds will be the quantity demanded, and 4,000 pounds will be the quantity supplied. So we consider this market in equilibrium or in balance. The amount that's going to be produced is the amount that's going to be bought up, assuming buyers and sellers can find each other. And so we can take that principle and apply it to question 2. The equilibrium price and quantity is where X marks the spot. So it is $8 per pound. And 4,000 pounds of pork bellies. So we're going to draw in 8 and 4,000. Now, given the price and the quantity, what's the total amount of money that's going to be earned by the pork belly sellers? Well, there we just have to take the price per pound, multiply it by the number of pounds sold. So that would be 8 times 4,000, which would give us $32,000. So that would be the total amount of money earned. Now, it's not their profit, that's just their revenue, because of course they got to take that $32,000 and they need to cover their costs to produce the 4,000 pounds of pork bellies. Next, we have to give an example of a price that would result in a surplus, and a surplus is simply any price where you have the supply is greater than demand. So any price that's higher than equilibrium will result in a surplus. So I highlighted it on the graph there. So $10 would work, $12 would work, $14 would work. Let's just grab 12 and we'll put that in. And then the amount of the surplus that the price is asking, what is the difference between the supply curve and the demand curve? At $12, we have 6,000 that is supplied. We have 2,000 that's demanded. That's a difference of 4,000 pounds. 6,000 minus 2,000. So you can see I've drawn the arrow there showing that there's the 6,000, there's the 2,000. We are trying to solve for what is that space I just circled there, and that is 4,000 pounds of pork bellies. That will be the extra that's in the market. So stands to reason that pork belly sellers are going to need to lower the price to get rid of that surplus. Now we're asked also to describe what would happen in the market if the price were $4 per pound, and then discuss how that would affect the price. I would just simply say that, well, at $4 per pound, you can see that the demand is going to be much greater than the supply. So you're going to have a shortage. There's going to be, consumers want to buy up 6,000 pounds of pork bellies, but producers can't make that much available at that low price. They can only make 2,000 available. So there's going to be a $4,000 shortage, or 4,000 pound shortage, sorry. And what we'd expect to have happen then is that the price of pork bellies should rise up towards equilibrium in order to balance out the market. So hopefully that makes sense, and you know that prices are always going to try to gravitate towards equilibrium. Now, bear in mind when we have shifts in the curve, as we'll see in our assignments coming up, that's going to cause prices to change, right? And we have all kinds of events that are constantly going on in a market that are causing prices to fluctuate. When you look at this example here, shown below are the four graphs, graph A, B, C, and D, that are the four cases that can result from a demand or a supply shift. And I marked them for you in blue. A supply increase is graph A, a supply decrease is graph B, a demand increase is graph C, and a demand decrease is graph D. And notice the thing you should be paying attention to is which way are the arrows pointing. Notice if it's pointing to the left, we're talking decrease. If it's pointing to the right, we're talking increase. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at an event for a item, and that would be the primary market. And then we're going to figure out which of these graphs represents what's happening in that market. So the first one that we're going to look at, I think, the pest infestation kills a large number of orange trees. Okay. Well, the first question we should always ask ourselves when we're looking at an event is this event affecting the buyers or the sellers for the product in question? And we're looking at oranges. And so if the number of orange trees is decreasing, that is affecting the suppliers directly. It doesn't affect me as a consumer. So that means that it's going to be a supply shift of some sort, either an increase or a decrease. Now, if we're looking at the pest infestation killing trees, that is an additional cost for producers of oranges. So it's going to make it more expensive to produce them. That means that the supply of oranges should decrease. So we should be looking at the curve shifting to the left. So since that's the case, we're going to make a little mark on B for oranges. And then you can see how the other markets are affected. Well, orange juice is going to see a decrease in supply because you need oranges to make orange juice. And the grapefruit, you see the demand increase for grapefruit because grapefruit trees weren't killed. So buyers will shift their demand to that. Now let's look at a new machine lowering the cost of harvesting potatoes. Well, in the potato market, we can see that, let's pause there. In the potato market, we can find that we are going to have an increase in the supply of potatoes. We have a change in technology here. It's become cheaper to produce potatoes. So that should cause the supply curve to shift to the right. French fries use potatoes as a resource in order to make the product. So if the price of a resource for sellers is becoming cheaper, that means they can make more of that product. So we have a supply increase for French fries. Now we need to look at what's happening for ketchup. Well, ketchup is a complementary good to French fries. So when we have complementary goods, we're talking about something that has to do with demand. And so we find that there's an increase in demand, C. Due to good profits, many farms are converted from other uses to hog production. So we're looking at farms that might have been used for cows or chickens or lamb now being hog farms. So we have an increase in the number of sellers of hogs, therefore it's A. When we look at chicken farms, well, then we got to figure some of those chicken farms were converted to hog farms. So the supply of chicken farms has decreased. So we are going to mark B for that. As a result, the demand for chicken feed is going to drop because farmers aren't going to need it as much. So we have a decrease in demand, or D there. Next, we have drinking hot chocolate becomes a worldwide fad. That's affecting the buyers of the hot chocolate. So the demand is increasing. So we have graph C. Boom. As far as cocoa is concerned, we should see that we'll have an increase in demand for cocoa, a necessary component of hot chocolate. However, chocolate bars will see a decrease in demand as a result of that because people are going to be buying hot chocolate instead. The last piece that we look at and we're asked is suppose events were happening that increase both the demand and the supply of a commodity, and explain how that could lead to a rise, a fall, or no change in the equilibrium price of the commodity, and what would happen to the equilibrium quantity. So the simplest answer is it depends on how far each curve shifts. If the supply curve shifts further to the right than the demand curve, you would expect to see the price would decrease, but the quantity would increase. If the demand curve shifted further to the right or increased more than the supply, stands to reason that the price, we would expect the equilibrium price that is, to go up, and the quantity would still increase. So in either case here, we would be looking at an increase in quantity if there was an increase in demand and supply. But we don't know about the price. It could go up, could go down, or it could be exactly the same if the demand and supply curves were happen to increase at the exact same rate. The key thing that you have to keep in mind as you're doing these puzzles is you want to have the 5 shifters of demand and the 5 shifters of supply handy. And when you're given an event, the first question you should ask yourself is this event causing the demand to change, or is it causing the supply to change? In other words, does it affect buyers or does it affect sellers? If you think the event affects the buyers, then you should go over to your demand shifters and answer the question, which one of these 5 is it changing? And as it's changing it, is it increasing it or is it decreasing it? Now, on the other hand, if you think the event is causing a change for the suppliers, like it's changing the cost to produce the item, go down and look at the 5 shifters and ask which of those 5 shifters is being met, and is it causing the supply to increase? In other words, the costs are getting reduced, so it's cheaper to produce. Or is it causing the supply to go down because it's more expensive to produce, have the costs increase? Anything involving cost should be suppliers. Anything that's involving willingness and ability to pay is the buyers or demand. That's the best advice I can give to you as you move forward here in working on your assignment and watching the next video.